making an HTML parsing script 100 times faster with Rayon. Recently, I was writing a Rust script together some to gather some data from the internet. The task at the end was fairly simple: visit an URL, retrieve the HTML, parse it, use the selector to find the relevant information, and write the result to a CSV file. Okay, so all he had to do was fairly simple: visit a URL, retrieve the HTML, parse it, use the selector to find relevant information, write the. Okay, he's just trying to scrape data. Okay, and the guy just wants to visit website and take the source out, HTML source out of it, and pass the relevant information which he needs and write them to CSV file. Okay, fairly decent. I used a request create for visiting the site and scraper for passing the HTML and CSV for writing the file. There was only one catch: the script would have to visit hundreds of pages. Okay, I understand the problem of it. So at a single time, if the operation was concurrent, it would take comparatively more time, and it's memory consuming and processor consuming too. So I understand the thing of it. Ryan kind of helped this guy to analyze this entire operation. That's what I'm figuring from the article, because the hype for Ryan is so much as of now that I'm anticipating too much things from Ryan. Running the script serially on my machine took 5 minutes. Okay, 324 seconds according to the time command. Okay, 5 minutes according to the time command. That's a long feedback loop. Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, cool. And while writing the first version of my code, I noticed that the most of the work could be done in parallel, like building the URL, retrieving the HTML, parsing and analyzing. Okay, he has 4 different tasks, and each task is not dependent on each other. I wouldn't say that. In a while since I use Ryan, but it supports explicit SIMD. So you can use this Rayon. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And make it work on all the CPUs, all the processing units. That's awesome. Okay. Single instruction, multiple data. Okay. I noticed that most of the work could be done in parallel, like building URL, retrieving the HTML, parsing, analyzing. In fact, I had to decide to write one file per page instead of having a single file for all output. Okay, because that would make writing results independent and parallelizable. Plus, combining files afterwards is just one of the simple and fast bash commands. Anyway, I had already toyed around with library, which regularly features in blogs and articles as an easy way to speed up Rust code without changing your implementation. Coincidentally, while I was writing this, Shuttle released a post about Ryan and good use case for the library, so I decided to give it a try. After reading the crate, Ryan 1.10.0, all I did was to add 2 imports and change the iterator into par iterator. Okay, so it's easy to combine or implement Rayon in your existing application. That's what this means. Am I right? So it's easy. That's what he's saying. Like I get that thing from him, that like all he had to do was 2 imports and add it to the code. So Rayon should be really well built enough to be plug and play kind of thing. That's what you're saying, Jack? After this extremely minor change, cargo run took less than 8 seconds with a release build that went down from 3.7 seconds. Most projects I worked on have significantly longer unit test runs. Obviously, you should take the exact figure with larger grain of salt. Also measure the speed of each run once, and the original serial run was done without the release flag, making it already approximately 100x speed bump unfair. So just by changing iterator to par iterator and importing the library, he made it damn fast. the guy just added par iterator instead of iterator, and the speed was almost 100x faster. Bump unfair as we are not measuring the same things, yet 100x just sounds so much better than 40x. Still, let's be skeptical and say this real speed up was close to 10 or 20x's. That is still absolutely amazing for one line code change. For a quick comparison, I wrote the first part of the script and where we get the information from the file and build URLs and retrieve the HTML in JavaScript using promise all. On my machine, it took 23 seconds, impressive, but then again, 10 IO is exactly with what JavaScript is best at. So it's safe to say that duration would have at the very least doubled had I added parsing, analyzing, and outputting. Okay. But which of the two versions required more code? Which one took longer to write? Are the valid questions that another programmer asked me afterwards. Hard to say. I never wrote the entire implementation in JavaScript. Still, I don't think it will surprise anyone that the specified JavaScript version was short and some 15 lines of code. Few would call it verbose. Okay, Rust meanwhile requires 30 lines to do the same work. Here's what it is. Since you're doing this entire job, if you ignore a programming language just because it takes more number of lines, then I guess you're making wrong decision. Because 30 and 50 lines of code, like you can just write it in a minute or so if you're fast enough. So I wouldn't consider number of lines that would take to write a particular program as a measuring factor to decide whether to use the language or not, or the library or not. Sounds like a win for JavaScript, although there was code dedicated to handling errors in my Rust code, which I skipped entirely in other version, and when retrieving the page in a single promise and all, the code would crash with connection timeout, forcing me to write 10 plus lines of code to batch the calls. Only when visiting less than 100 pages, I could get away with a single and simple all. Meanwhile, comparing the speed of development is even harder. The JavaScript version was very easy to read, although I did make 2 mistakes that caused the program to crash at runtime. Meanwhile, the Rust code just worked. Doing the calls with requests took little effort thanks to the prior experience with the crate. And despite being now new to Scraper, getting it running proved easy. What I spent most of the time on was figuring out what selectors would do best for extracting the information I need from the HTML, and I would have done that regardless of the language preference. But I still strongly disagree on the point that this entire holy grail of an implementation was just ignored because JavaScript took less number of lines to implement. But the safety offered by Rust is far greater compared to the amount of lines you have to write. And that's something which I can't agree on, but let's see. To conclude, Rayon allows you for very easy parallelization of Rust tasks, like doing REST calls, parsing HTML, and writing the result to a HTML file. On my machine, it outperformed the basic JavaScript at input and output. Okay, IO. Comparing Rust and JavaScript implementation for retrieving HTML, the former was twice as long, though it was partially due to the error handling and the ignorance batching. I don't know. Finally, writing the script in Rust and not JavaScript did not noticeably slow me down, mostly because I spent bulk of my time thinking about it. Good selector. The performance boost given by Rust is far more superior to the number of lines which he thought would factor in, because I can write in 10 more lines of code if I feel that would be more safe. Okay, the only reason Rust is not being used because it took more number of lines. But if a new programmer shows up and he messes something up in JavaScript, there is no hell way that he could figure it out in a decent amount of time. But whereas Rust can give you that opportunity, the initial learning curve is hard, but Rust will still help you to precisely point where your code is going wrong. I could write 100 lines worth Rust and 6 lines worth JavaScript, and I would still choose 100 lines worth Rust because I consider the feelings of the other guy who is reading my code. And that's my opinion on HTML parsing script 100 times faster with Rayon.